Hello, my name is Phil Mullen. Thank you for joining us. You are listening to In the Half-Light, a podcast by Skeen Press in association with the Museum of Literature Ireland. Today we're talking about something rarely discussed, what it was like to grow up Black and mixed race in Ireland in the 20th century. For some of us, that meant growing up in foster families or being adopted, while for many others, they were incarcerated in institutions such as mother and baby homes and industrial schools. My guests and I were born into a country that, for most of that time, refused to acknowledge us. Our voices and our stories have largely been absent from conversations about these institutions and adoption stories in Ireland. In part 3, we conclude with the experiences that carried into later life and the reflections of what it meant to grow up Black in Ireland before the Celtic Tiger. Identity always plays a very important part for the mixed race Irish, as we hear in this final part of our discussion. Do you think growing up in Ireland as a mixed race person shaped who you are?
Definitely did. It would have been all negative, as I said before, until I went to live in the UK. Like you're talking about multicultural society, I was in London first, then I was in Birmingham. Birmingham is home from home for anybody Irish. That's where all my confidence grew, Philo, and that's where I became myself. Whereas before I went to England, I didn't want anybody to see me. I didn't want to go anywhere strange. I didn't want to go into a different part of Dublin, in case people had called me names or look at me or whatever, But when I went to England, I realised you can go anywhere you want. Nobody's going to, well, first of all, they're not going to verbally abuse you because it's against the laws, the race relations and whatever. And I would say all the time I was in England, I don't ever remember being racially abused at all. And my confidence grew over the years I was there. And I'll always be grateful to England for that.
Okay. What about you, Sharon? Do you think growing up in Ireland as a mixed race person really shaped your sense of who you are?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Because I know no other. Much of I think I have a deep longing to be accepted, and no matter how you tried to fit in, it was never accepted. So yeah, I longed all of my life to be considered Irish, and I found, like what you were saying, Philomena, going into different parts of Ireland and just, always holding that part where you might again experience, an insult. Sometimes it didn't happen, but because they were so familiar and they were so frequent, you were holding it. So an awful lot of internalized stuff would get triggered. And whether you were experiencing racism or not, you were in that lived experience. And I think that's what most people don't understand. When they say, oh, you have a chip on your shoulder, he didn't mean it. They'd not seen the lived experience that Black people have to experience in this country. And I think for me, trying to understand racism, I have really began a little bit more to understand how I operate or how I connect. More now today, I speak out, I use my music and I give talks about racism. And what I try to focus on actually is more about the privileges of whiteness rather than looking at how we have been victimized all the time. Because when you talk about racism to white people, they disconnect. They don't see that they're connected. But actually, the reason we are experiencing racism is because of white superiority. Yeah. And if we're not looking at that, then we're not really looking at racism at all, because that's where the core problem is the white privilege of people. And I see, and the thing is, one of the things that comes up for me a lot is that when I'm with friends, I can never talk about racism. It's like, it's not that they'll shut you up, it's just that they won't engage. And there's kind of this blankness comes over you. And I think, I just want to talk about what life is like to my Irish countrymen and women in a way that we can just have a conversation.
Like I've had experiences of saying to, like say, pulling somebody at work and saying, that's racist, you shouldn't be doing that. You know what I mean? That's a racist comment. And I don't like it. You're insulting me when you do that.
Yeah,
and they turn around and say, but you're not black. And say, I am black. There's only two colours. One's white and the other's black.
Well, when that actually is thrown at me, I usually say, well, if I'm walking the streets with you, trust me, I'm the one that's going to be called a nigger, not you. So when you say that I'm Irish, you're actually looking at from your lens. You're not looking at from my experience. And you don't want to know, because when I talk about it, you know, there's that sense of withdrawing from me. And then I find that our connection is kind of like uncomfortable.
You don't go there.
Oh, I do. I go there anyway. But at the end of the day, I go there with some people. There's two people in my life, only two. Bernie is one, and I have another person, a very close friend. And I can say whatever I need to say. And they will listen because they know. But it took years, it took decades for them to get to where they are today. You know, because I didn't give up. And with other people, anybody that actually challenges me now or insults me, I go. I don't violently go or aggressively go, but I go into their energy and I go very close and I say, repeat that again. And they usually end up being cowards. And especially men, especially white men and men in crowds. I have found time and time again that actually if you go towards them, you can feel in their body language that they're getting really uncomfortable. And you say, okay, I'm here, say it. And they cannot, because they cannot deal with somebody who's actually taken the initiative and moved in to their space. They're not expecting it. And because they're so taken off, they actually don't know how to deal with me. But it always hurts. You know, people say, well, you know, it doesn't hurt. It always hurts. But that's the racism only on the one level. There's other racisms like that operate within politics and media. I mean, you don't even have to go outside your door to experience racism. It's very available to us on radio or TV.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you. I live in a white world anyway, so all my friends are white, but we never talk about racism, even when the thing happened with George Floyd. And everyone was talking about it and putting up these black squares on their Facebook pages. But none of my friends, not one of my friends came to me and asked me how I felt. Because they can't talk about it. They don't know how to talk about it. Or I think they think that only happens over there, that I couldn't possibly be affected because you're Irish, you know. I'm Irish to them. And I am Irish anyway, but I mean, I don't think they can make the connection.
No, it's a global phenomenon.
Yes, I think they think that's America. It's always been like that, segregation. We don't have racism in Ireland, especially not now, because there's lots of diverse, it's a diverse population now. It's worse now than ever, but people think, no, that's all, you're making a big deal out of nothing. Again.
Are you sure? They'll say.
Yeah.
Are you sure? Are you sure this is that?
Yeah. He was just having the banter. You're so sensitive.
You're overreacting.
God, you're always like that.
She's like, God, here she goes again.
Yeah, looking for attention.
You know, as if we're talking about the same incident that happened decades ago.
Yeah.
We're talking about something that happened maybe that day. Here she goes again.
Because sometimes you forget about your colour. Sometimes, like in my new job, I'd forgotten I didn't look like everybody else until this man pointed it out to me, you know, that, well, obviously I know, but he made it clear that you're obviously not from here because you don't look like us. Welcome to the country. I've been here for 56 years, you know what I mean? And do I have to justify myself and explain to him? Because I couldn't think of anything nice or diplomatic to say without getting angry, so I left it. But it sat on me for days.
I had a workman working for me for 3 weeks at the house, and closer to the end of the time, he says to me, Sharon, you speak very good English. And I said, can you not hear the Irish accent? He says, but that's what I mean, you speak very good English. And I said, it's probably because I'm Irish. It's 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, when we lived in Birmingham, say if we were in a pub and say some always seem to be the boys from Mayo, and they'd say, "But where are you from?" And say, "From Dublin." "But where are you really from?" We'd say, "Dublin." And they'd say, "Are you sure you're from Dublin?" "Yeah." "Oh, is that not..." We used to say, "Listen, you've heard of Paul McGrath, you've heard of Phil Innes. There's more than 4 black people that live in Dublin. So 1, 2, 3, 4, there's more of us. So get used to it."
Come and be good, yeah.
So can I ask you, after kind of so many years of silence and erasure of this concept of there being black people born and living on the island, what's it like to see this to have this conversation? You know, does it bring any sense of recognition, or is it too little too late?
Well, I think there's a new influx of black people now over the last 20, 25 years. So I think we get a bit mixed up with them. Like, they think we're part of the new generation of Irish people. And that's kind of annoying, for me anyway. You know, it's like, no, I've always been here. I'm not new. And that's what I have to say. What? I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think it's getting worse because of the racism and all this stupid stuff on social media. And, Irish people are going to France. They're ditching their passports. They're coming back to Ireland. They're getting a car. They're getting a house. They're getting free social welfare. They're getting this. They're getting that. They're getting to that. Now they're much better off.
Oh, they're pretending.
And yeah, claiming asylum, and then they're getting everything for nothing. I definitely think, like the far right and all this, like we were down in, myself and my sister were down in Euston train station, and we were having a cup of coffee, and all these people that had been anti-immigrant people were all coming back down, getting their trains back down to Cork with their flags and everything. And this gang sat beside us, and the one fella started saying, and imagine they were asking us to put pennies in the box for the black babies.
We have to stand up to them, their pack of lies. And as you were saying, you hear. I remember listening from the distance at some of these guys in O'Connell Street and down, and you heard the stories they rattle over the beam, and they're preaching to people who, if you told them red was green, they'd believe it. You know, they could say anything and they'd be all agreeing with it. And they're saying they're getting cars, they're getting houses, and you're all hopeless, and these are all getting them, almost egging them on to start trouble. And you see, there's nobody up on that platform discussing, contradicting that.
But they're not going to listen anyway.
But we may have to make a stand against that kind of rhetoric. Otherwise, these people, you preach to a mob, and they'll only follow what they say to the mob.
Yeah.
But you also learn from their past. And the one thing you dream of is when you do have your own family, you make sure they get the chance that you didn't get.
I do think I hold the government partially responsible as well for the racism in Ireland, because they have set up 2 groups. They have set up the Ukrainians on one side and people under IPAS on another side, which is mostly coming from North Africa, Nigeria, and even what I call the global East, and that includes Palestinians, right? And so, while the government encouraged Irish people to welcome Ukrainians not only into their community but into their homes. And it has to be said that before the war broke out, Irish people knew very little, if anything at all, about Ukrainians. Yeah. But when people under IPAS were coming into Ireland, they were seen straight away as a problem, and that's where an awful lot of the racism kicked in, because the government kept very quiet about these people. And this vacuum was allowed to develop. And within that vacuum, there was a lot of hatred. And now if you look at what's happening across Ireland, there's an awful lot of hostile protests outside of direct provision centres. They don't happen in places where Ukrainians are living, right?
They're also brown-skinned. And you can differentiate between...
Exactly, that's my point. That's the 2 tiers.
Someone from Nigeria and someone from Ukraine. Yes. Ukrainians can mix into Ireland.
But that's my point.
And sees the difference.
But the system clearly separated the white refugees. Now, and I'm glad they were taken care of. Absolutely. Don't get me wrong. But that has actually filtered into our society. And so when we walk the streets, that makes us more vulnerable to attack. And that's what's happening. Yeah. So the government, I do hold responsible. I really do. And, you know, I really feel that, like, even yesterday I was out walking. I just went to Kinvara for a walk. And I got a text message from a group I'm in. They said they're protesting outside the Merryman Hotel right now. There was two families under IPAS were moved in. They had Ukrainians, but they were asked to leave. And the community kicked in and found all places to, for Ukrainians. They looked after them, and rightly. But now, because we have people under IPAS, black people, they're protesting, right? And so I was walking home and I thought, oh God, I cannot bear this again, because this wasn't the first time. And so I stood my ground watching them, right? There was about 6 of them, but they had a plaque, a sign that says their whole justification was to get the hotel back because it was the only hotel. That's the usual, right? But what they actually had done is that they had planned on about 10 massive tractors. Now, this is a village, right? To go through the village with these signs on each tractor saying, we want our hotel back. Right? And it's small groups of family in this hotel looking out the window, terrified, absolutely terrified. And so within an hour, we were able to get a crowd of people of welcome, and we had our signs. And the thing is that they had already planned this because RTE was there. RTE was there before we even knew it existed. Tina G and the Irish Independent were there, ready for the spectacular whatever. And we stopped it. We actually went in front of the tractors, stopped the tractors, and we had this big sheet with Falcha written on it, you know. And we stayed there for about 3/4 of an hour. And what they did then is the cameras actually also came to us and they asked us for what was going on for us. And we said, we hope now that you're going to have a balance here, because that's not what we're seeing. And this wouldn't be the truth if you don't. And TG Carr, they did very well. Actually, they kind of steered away from the hostile protest and they focused on the welcome. So it turned out very well, much to the disappointment of those who had planned it, because this was just by chance that we were there, you know. And so this is what you're dealing with, and especially in small towns. And it's people like ourselves who are left to pick up the pieces.
What does it mean to you now to be asked to share these memories in public and to share your memories in public?
Well, it shows that we've all had similar experiences, no matter what our age or which part of the country we were living in. We've all shared the same experiences, and at the time we probably thought we were alone. But it's a thing.
There's similarities with what you're saying, and I'm thinking, and it's bringing up stuff, you know. So yeah, there's similarities.
Definitely.
Yeah. And it's nice to talk to Black Irish, because I don't get that opportunity.
Yeah, especially ones that have gone through the same experiences. I know everybody's experiences are different, but if you speak to somebody that was in industrial school or an orphanage or whatever, well, straight away you've got a bonding with them.
You have a connection.
Because they've gone through what you've gone through. And then if they're of the same mixed race as yourself or whatever, you have a double bonding then, you know. No, I think it's always great to get around the table and talk about your experiences, no matter what your experiences are. Like, I think talking heals, definitely. You've got to talk.
Yeah, you feel sad, you know, after going, you say 20, 30 years, and you made progress, getting the race laws, getting all this, and people are supposed to be a little bit more educated and better understanding. And I think they need to understand the world has got smaller, it's multicultural, and there's going to be migration. The Irish have to remember their own history of migration, and they're not too thing when it comes to immigration. Is that the way I'm saying? And, you know, you wonder what's wrong with them. All you have to do is check. They're always boasting about 40 Irish million in America and about 25 Irish percent Australia. And I remember when South Africa changed the amount of applications to get Irish passports. There was over 18 to 20,000 applying for Irish passports from South Africa. These were the whites, you know. Suddenly they remembered they were Irish.
But you look at all the
No, but they opened.
look at all the applications for Brexit.
Yeah, you know.
You don't have to go that far.
Yeah, but, you know, the immigrants are a migrant. And in fact, they also got to understand if the migrant people left today, I think Ireland would be in trouble. They really need them.
Oh, they do.
They do.
Sharon, you used the term Black Irish, and younger people talk about being Black and Irish. And we, I suppose, have been pushed into this new space of mixed race. Because I know when I was growing up, I was just Black. But then as Africans came into Ireland in the 90s, that kind of changed. Do you think that has changed how you see yourself in Ireland or where you belong as part of the Irish nation now that there's more ethnicities, a bigger African population that has come in? Has it impacted on your own identity as a Black Irish person?
To be honest, when Africans came to in Galway first, there was that tension all the time. And now when I go there, people don't even pay any attention. You know, nobody's looking at me anymore. There's no, oh, there's the, you know.
You don't think they differentiate you sometimes?
Oh, the Africans do.
Yeah.
But the whites not necessarily. No. And I would see white people as my people because that's where I grew up, you know. But I don't like big, but I love to see the diversity in Galway City. I really just love it. And what touches me is the younger ones now, not even the generation that came in, but the younger generation. They're different. They have a sense of confidence in them, you know. And I just like to see that. I only wish, I'm glad, I don't want to be young, but I wish I had that kind of experience. Or I used to wish that I wish my mother left me in England where I could have been part of a Black experience, you know. So that's nice. But the other side of it is, again, as a Black Irish people, we're not seen. We're rarely recognised by media or politicians as Irish people in our own right, with our own unique Irish experience. It's just, unless of course you are Paul McGrath, then you're accepted as Irish. But the rest of us, no. And that invisibility, I feel that all the time. I feel when I'm talking to a white person, I know that they're not seeing me as Irish. I can see it in their bodies. I think one of the things that we are expert in, and that's is reading language, reading the body language.
Yeah.
Because we've had to be, you know.
When you walk into a room, you're already kind of
Exactly.
assessing who's looking and what the vibe is. Anyway, you can't even help it. You don't even do it on purpose. You're already sussing out who's giving you a dirty look or...
Exactly. And that's what we have in common. And I don't know, but my longing to be Irish has shifted to just now longing to just try to accept who I am. I have struggled all my life to just accept myself as I am, to accept my African characteristics. And I'm facing the fact that I'm actually 63 years of age and I still don't accept myself. But that's a relief because now I know. And I'm not fighting it anymore. And I'm not looking for anybody outside of me to change because nobody can go there for me. I've got to do this myself. And you know something? I'm okay with that. I'm really okay with that. That's where I'm at right now.
But yeah, like you said, I suppose I live in Cork and I love to see the African community. I just love it. I love the shops. We can get hair products and stuff like that. We couldn't get all that before. I used to have to get it through England. But it's nice. Yeah, it is nice. But they do look at us different. I find the Africans they're a bit confused because I was going to get my hair plaited several times and they didn't understand. They didn't know I was mixed. And I'm thinking, but my hair is Afro. You're plaiting my hair. And when I told her my father was Nigerian, he was like, For me, it's obvious. Like you said, growing up, we were Black growing up. But to the Africans, we're not quite Black, are we?
Yeah, I went into trying to get some hair cream, you know, and the African woman was giving me cream and she mentioned something. She says, ye people. And I just, okay, I'm ye people everywhere you go.
You're Irish.
Yeah. But to the Irish, I'm ye people too.
Exactly. So we're not quite there yet, I think.
Yeah, it is. That's interesting, the ye people, because about 2 years ago I was getting a lift from a Nigerian to a conference in Limerick or somewhere. And she said to me, where are you from? And I said, my father was Nigerian, my mother was Irish. She studied here as a student. And she said, oh, you're one of them.
And did you ask what she meant?
No, I knew exactly what she meant.
What did she mean then?
She meant my father had come, gotten an Irish woman pregnant. I was one of them, kind of as the result of one of those relationships. You know, you're one of them. It's like this generation of children who were left behind, unwanted by anybody. African fathers, Irish mother, you know.
Is it?
But I knew exactly what she meant when she said, you're one of them. It's like,
she felt superior to you because she really was Nigerian. You were only pretending to be part.
Well, I wasn't pretending to be Nigerian, but it was just, you're one of those Irish.
Mixed ones.
Mixed ones, yeah.
I remember I had a meeting and I told him about our group, that there's quite a group of mixed black people who are of African descent, and there's a problem that they could never have problems tracing their fathers. And he invited me to a meeting in the African Centre, and I met people from South Africa, Zambia, Nigeria, and all that. And I more or less spoke about the situation, and lots of them are trying to trace their backgrounds. And it's a lot of the information has been kept from them because of redacted information on the birth certificates. And some of them said to me afterwards, if they can help, they would be glad to. We'll find out which areas they're from and they might be able to help out. Now, that never got followed through, but that was the first time I let them know of us being of African descent and that we existed even before they ever came.
Yeah.
And that's where we got a little bit more recognition from them. It helped to break us, because a lot of the mixed Irish did not try to link up with Africans. I probably was one of the few who got talking to them a lot earlier before anybody else and got to know them better and helped to see if we could assimilate and say, you know, we need to see our African side of our lives as well. And that did help.
So I just want to thank you all for trusting us with your stories. This conversation is part of something much bigger, reclaiming a history that was actually taken from us. So in just a couple of words, is there anything you'd like to leave listeners with? Something you'd want them to carry away from the time that we've spent together today?
Yeah, I think for me personally, you know, being mixed race and being brought up in Ireland, I just think my upbringing in Ireland has made me feel more Irish than anything else. And if anybody asks me what's my nationality, I say I'm Irish. I sort of never really wanted to delve into the African side of my family because I just feel at home in Ireland. And when I was in England, I couldn't wait to get back to Ireland to live. Even though I had a good life and a good job in England and was happy there and whatever, still had the yearning to return home. So my abiding thing from being brought up and what I learned when I was brought up and the way I was taught and whatever is like somehow or other I feel completely at home in Ireland. I feel that Ireland is my home.
And what would you like people to take away from
That there's always been Irish black people in Ireland from a long time ago. It's not new. I did grow up in Ireland. I was brought up as an Irish person, and I feel like I missed out on my African side. So I'm trying to catch up now. I am an Irish person, born and bred, but I am of mixed origin. And yeah, enjoying the new diversity in the country.
Yes, I feel that when they ask you about being Irish, you almost have to nearly apologise to them for being Irish because they find it hard to accept black person is Irish. And you can be as proud of Ireland and as proud of all the achievements Ireland has achieved. But they need to accept that there's going to be ethnic people from different countries born in Ireland, just like ethnic Irish were born all over the world when they migrated. There's no change, and slowly the world is now slowly becoming a multicultural country, just like anywhere in the world. That's what happens when you travel. That's when you study in different countries. It's going to happen. If they want pure Irish, there's no such thing as a pure Irish. You're all descendants from the Vikings, you're descendants from the Spanish, the North Africans, and even most Irish have a bit of African blood in them. In fact, we should be calling the Irish our cousins.
Well, to be honest, if it weren't for black people, white people wouldn't exist at all.
So all come from Africa.
I actually think we're, I think there's a story there as well. I think for me, I think I would like white Irish to understand that there is a diversity in this country, and that when we say we're Irish, that I wish they would just accept it without having to be interrogated as to how we got here and how we located ourselves here. Like I remember you said something once, and I thought it was very interesting. You said that people ask you where you're from. Some people can be curious and some people have other ideas, but you said that it's not the asking sometimes, it's the repetition. The pain is in the repetition, and I always remember that, and I always use that, because then people understand that, because they want to excuse they're asking you where you come from. And they don't understand when sometimes you may have been asked a few times already, and that you're not ready to actually have a conversation, a third conversation with another white person. And sometimes these people are also foreign. You know, they could be English, they could be from other parts of the world. And what I sense sometimes is their entitlement to come and ask me, and then for them not to accept what I say. I have issues with that. So for the listener, understand that there are Irish people that come from different experiences.
So what we've heard are the kinds of stories that have been absent from the official record and narrative of both the institutions and the nation. They're not footnotes to this story, but instead they tell us something about how race and belonging as Irish were actively managed by church and state as part of this attempt to maintain some fictional national identity. And while the state has apologised for the wider system of institutional abuse, it has yet to address the harm done to survivors like us. And that silence matters because it says something about how Ireland continues to narrate its own past. Conversations such as this challenge this manufactured history, and in making our stories available, we hope to show that what was buried isn't gone and what was forgotten isn't lost. So you've been listening to a Skeen Press podcast, a space for remembering out loud, where the stories that were never meant to surface speak for themselves, refusing silence and undoing forgetting, one voice at a time.
Thinking Aloud, Thinking Together is a new conversation series from Skeen in partnership with the Museum of Literature Ireland, amplifying voices that have been silenced in Irish cultural life. It brings together artists, writers and thinkers whose work offers a radical new perspective on existing narratives. Thinking Aloud, Thinking Together provides a space to discuss points of connection and concern in contemporary culture. These conversations explore topics that are seldom spoken of in mainstream public discourse in Ireland, such as identity, relationships, shame, exclusion, and reversing the impact of erasure from history and culture. It offers a space for us to reconsider our relationship with one another, to reimagine the ways in which we live, and to rewrite the legacies we leave behind. Supported by the Rowan Trust and the Arts Council of Ireland. Produced by Ian Mullaney. Music by Oisín Mulch Pilo. For more information, visit skeenpress.com.